Hey everybody, my name is Aaron and I quit my job to start a startup. It's called Hi-Hat and it makes being a fan into a game. I post new video blogs every week, every Wednesday, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with the latest. This week, I'm barreling towards launch and, I've decided that I'm going to do it and, it's not going to be great at first, but what I am going to do is I'm going to start putting together a list of bands and artists that I'm interested in contacting and trying to get on board. So I decided that an interesting place to start would be Live 105. That's the local radio station for those of you who aren't local. The local alternative radio station, who put together a list of the top 16 local bands sometime last year. I think it was a few months ago. And I went through that list, and I also added some other bands, but I started putting together a spreadsheet of local bands that I'm, interested in contacting to see if they want to get involved. And as I was putting together the list, I decided to start on this idea that I had for the app itself, which was that I wanted to be able to come up with some kind of rating for bands for their popularity using social media. So how many Facebook likes do they have? How many Twitter followers? How many SoundCloud followers? How many Spotify monthly listeners? Basically the stats that are publicly available from the social networks and music services and whatnot. And so I started doing that. I put together a spreadsheet. I included the bands that I've already been talking to, the bands from the list, a few other bands that I thought of along the way. And I started putting in the numbers from the social networks and stuff. And then I actually started adding them together and using some adjustments and multipliers to account for the fact that Twitter followers seem to be inflated and YouTube subscriptions seem to be really deflated, if that's the right word for it. But basically my goal was to be able to add these numbers up together and then come up with a sort of popularity rating for the bands. And it's been really useful. I mean, of course, I also put together their contact information, whether or not they were on a major label, which kind of excludes them for now, and, if they had a manager or stuff like that. One thing I learned that was really interesting from this list and from the ratings that I put together is that there is some overlap between bands that are on major labels and bands that are on independent labels or not on any label at all as far as their popularity goes. So there were actually a fair number of bands that were not on a major label, that were on independent labels, or that didn't really have a label, whose popularity exceeded by a fair amount some bands that were on major labels. And I'm not really sure what to make of that, but I do know that it probably presents an opportunity, and I'm not sure exactly where the opportunity is. Maybe it could be useful for me, maybe not. But either way, there's either a miscalibration in how major labels are picking up bands, or the bands are just straight up rejecting major labels, and maybe they're qualified, maybe they could get signed to a major label, but maybe they're deciding that the type of incentives that major labels can offer, which are pretty well documented, aren't good enough anymore. And that maybe the financial structures that major labels use are no fun. A lot of people have written about that. But anyway, it's just an interesting observation. That's it for this week. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so that I know that people are interested in this. Okay, see you next week.